Welcome back to the Watchman, a continuous study on the book of Esther. We are going to conclude tonight with chapter 10, but before we do that, just a quick recap of the first 9 chapters. In chapters 1 and 2, we have God's sovereign hand in unseen ways. We have the king of Persia holding a grand feast, trying to get his queen Vashti to come before the group. She refuses. He exiles her, removes the crown from her head, and basically holds a new search for a new queen, which we know that Esther, a Jewish orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai, is chosen because the king found favor with her and crowns Esther queen. In this same first 2 chapters, we have Mordecai uncovering a plot to assassinate the king. He informs Esther, who then relays the warning to King Ahasuerus, leading to the conspirators' execution. We then move to chapters 3 and 4, where we know that Esther was positioned for purpose. And we have Haman, an official, elevated by the king, becoming enraged when Mordecai refuses to bow down to him. And in response, Haman convinces the king to issue a decree ordering the annihilation of all the Jews in the Persian Empire on a specific date, and that decree is sent throughout the kingdom. We know that the specific date was chosen, the date and month, from a lot, which we'll learn in this week's video, the significance of that. Mordecai mourns the decree, wearing sackcloth and ashes. He urges Esther to go to the king and intercede on behalf of the people, but she is hesitant because going before a king without him wanting you unsummoned could result in death. But Mordecai reminds her that she too will not escape the decree, and perhaps she became queen for such a time as this. Esther decides to act and asks Mordecai and the Jews to fast and pray for 3 days while she prepares to approach the king. We then have Esther chapters 5 through 7, where we have the bold faith in the face of fear. Esther courageously goes before the king, however, still hesitant. She invites him to a banquet. Then we learn that at that first banquet, she is still hesitant and invites him to a second banquet. There is when she finally exposes Haman's plot to annihilate the Jewish people. In those chapters, we also have a night where the king was unable to sleep and his royal records read to him, and he learns that Mordecai had once saved his life but was never rewarded. The next morning, Haman arrives to request Mordecai's execution, but before he can speak, the king asks how to honor someone he wishes to reward. Thinking it was for himself, Haman says royal treatment, which to his surprise, the king orders Haman to give the royal treatment to Mordecai instead, which just enraged him even more. And then we have the unveiling of Esther's Jewish identity and exposing Haman's plot, where the king, enraged, orders Haman to be hanged on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Then, chapters 8 and 9, we have the reversal of evil. Esther pleaded with the king to reverse the decree. However, once a decree has been made by a king, it cannot be revoked. So instead, the king makes a new decree, allowing Mordecai, permitting the Jews to defend themselves on the day of Haman's attempted plot to overthrow and annihilate the Jewish people. The decree was sent throughout the empire, bringing joy to the Jews, and many of the non-Jews aligned with them out of fear. So then on that appointed day, the Jews successfully defended themselves, killing their enemies, including Haman's 10 sons. And we have the festival of Purim, which is going to be talked about a little bit more now. So in Esther chapter 10, we have remembering God's deliverance. The final chapter is brief, highlighting King Ahasuerus' greatness and the continued rise of Mordecai, who becomes second in command to the king. Mordecai's leadership benefits the Jewish people, bringing peace and prosperity for years. The Jewish people established the Feast of Purim to celebrate their deliverance, ensuring that God's faithfulness would never be forgotten. We too must remember and give thanks for his work in our lives. If you turn in your Bibles Esther chapter 9, verse 28 says, "So these days were to be remembered and celebrated throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city. And these days of Purim were not to fail from among the Jews, or their memory fade from their descendants." Now, we know in previous books of the Bible before Esther, we have stones being resurrected and altars being resurrected in remembering how God had delivered his people of a significant situation in their lives. So this right here, this feast of Purim, was to celebrate the Jewish people deliverance and God's faithfulness so that it would never be forgotten. The main point, God's faithfulness, should be remembered and separated in our own lives as well. The Jewish people established the Feast of Purim, which means lot or lottery, which I told you to keep an eye on all the way back in the earlier videos. And when Haman cast the lot on a specific day and month, that is where we get the Feast of Purim, or the Feast of Lot, to commemorate their deliverance on that specific day. This name is significant because it refers to the way Haman cast lots back in Esther chapter 3, verse 7. During the festival, one tradition includes the book of Esther being read aloud in synagogues, and every time Haman's name is mentioned, people are to make a noise to blot out his memory. This annual celebration was a way for them to remember how God had saved them and to pass that story down to future generations. Thus, Purim is a celebration of God's unseen but powerful providence, turning what seemed to be a random fate into a divine deliverance. The book ends with Mordecai in a position of honor, signifying how God elevates those who remain faithful to him. It is important for us to remember and celebrate what God has done in our lives as well. Whether through testimonies, traditions, acts of worship, we should regularly reflect on his faithfulness and share his goodness with others. Now, the story of Esther is more than just a historical account. It is a timeless reminder of God's faithfulness and his ability to use ordinary people for extraordinary purposes, just like in the book of Ruth as well. Though God's name is never mentioned here, his presence is woven throughout every chapter, teaching us that even when we cannot see him, he is at work. May we, like Esther and Ruth, recognize the divine purpose in our lives, have the faith and trust in God that he is always in control, even when he seems hidden. I hope you've been blessed by both the study on the book of Ruth and the book of Esther, two women that are ordinary, but yet were called to do extraordinary things to bring glory and honor to God for his divine purposes. Till next time, take care, God bless, and be strong.